Hello everyone, it's Vince Swell saying it again, and welcome back to Random Posture Critiques. It's been too long since I posted one of these, and considering that they're not exactly hard to make, you would think that I would post them more regularly, or I think that phrasing was work. But I apologize for the delay. I have a few that are saved up, and I was planning on putting them out, but I suffered from a horrible mental condition, which is called laziness and lack of motivation. Which, again, since these are the easiest videos ever to put out, I am quite embarrassed to say that I was too lazy to do it, which, yeah, whatever. Um, let's see, I'm clicking on the random pasta entry today. Oh, by the way, expect at some point, a commentary track on, from me, of course, who else, on the Nightmare on Elm Street remake for those at all interested. So, yeah, be on the lookout for that. Okay. I have one story here, but I want to see if I could find another. You know what? Just for the hell of it, I'm going to cover two stories because I'm that much of a badass. The first, let me see, credited to someone by Chip Eater. This story is called The Tapping. The rain was distracting. It was so distracting that it seemed to distort each word I attempted to read. But the constant barrage of water on my window was a luxury I would soon be begging to come back. I put down my book, frustrated. After a while, the rain died down a little. I let out a sigh of relief, about to pick my book back up. There was a subtle, at first, barely noticeable. It was subtle at first, barely noticeable. But just as I was reaching for my end table, your what? Whatever, I heard a soft, persistent tapping. Rain still drizzled down on my window, but the tapping was different. It was in perfect rhythm, coming every second and a half. I crept towards my window, terrified beyond my wits. Just a tapping noise. My hand shook violently as I held onto the drapes. Uh, uh, isn't this a little extreme? I mean, it's just a tapping noise. It could be anything. I shut my eyes and breathed in deep. Finally mustering up some courage, I dragged the drapes to the sides. There was nothing behind the window. Rainwater dropping from the gutters. They came down in rhythm because of the gutters. Redundancy is redundant. I breathed another sigh of relief. My heart was pounding underneath my chest, as opposed to pounding in my knee. I told myself I was being ridiculous, but then my heartbeat started to slow down, and I heard it. Tapping. This time it sounded different. Not like rain on a window. It sounded like a hand on a door. No way I am opening that door, I thought to myself. You know, that door. You know the one in the house that opens to places? You know, that door. I turned the lights off and curled up into a ball but underneath my blanket. I pretended to sleep, afraid to even move. I lied on my bed motionless, keeping my eyes closed tight for about an hour before the tapping finally stopped. At that point I wasn't happy so much as surprised. It seemed a little too good to be true. It's just a tapping noise. Slowly, I began to open my eyes. My eyelids fluttered as my vision began to clear. I was horrified at what I saw. Outside the window, something was peeking in. I only caught a glimpse of its piercing eyes and hideous grin before it slid away from the frame. It must have seen my open eye. It must have seen me open my eyes. The tapping was gone, but now there was a slow scratching. The scraping was similar to a cat's purr, gentle and lingering. What kind of game is this thing playing with me? I thought. I was slowly growing tired of the whole thing. Eventually I got over my fear and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? It was relieving to actually hear the sound of a human being's voice. Something's trying to kill me. I locked myself in my room, but it's waiting for me to come out for more than an hour. It's been waiting. It's been waiting for me to come out for more than an hour. I replied. We're dispatching police to your location now. Wait, you have to give your information first, don't you? Whatever. Just as I hung up the phone, the scratching turned into slamming. The creature, whatever it was, started banging on my door forcefully. I just realized you didn't once describe what the creature actually looked like. I mean, it had piercing eyes and a hideous grin. It might be a giant mouth attacking him. I felt a tingle surge through me. I'm sorry. Fear crept back into my bones. I felt a tingle surge through me. Tears rolled down my cheek as I prayed for the police to come quick. Thankfully, it didn't seem like the creature would be breaking down my door anytime soon. Maybe if I had a couple hours more. 20 minutes after the call, I heard sirens outside my house. The police were here. I wet my face with a sense of hope. I went to the window to let them know which room I was in. I reached the window and the sliming stopped. I looked to my driveway. The police were getting out of the car when a devilish silhouette appeared. I watched in horror as they were torn apart almost instantly by the ghoulish figure. It ripped the sirens and lights up as well. In a split second, it had disappeared back into the house. And again, the tapping began. Lame. Looking at the comments. Awesome. I made an account only to comment on this creepypasta. I wish it was longer though. Super long because very interesting. I like reading long creepypastas about things like this. This was dull as shit. Okay, actual criticisms. I always speak about how there needs to be a sense of escalation with stories like this. There was no build up to the creature whatsoever. You didn't work to set an atmosphere or even explain the kind of setting around this guy. Like, is he home alone? Like, I'm supposed to infer that, I know, but is he home alone? Does he live with his parents? Is it a teenager? Is it an adult? Like, he was apparently reading a book. What book? Why was he reading? Like, is he a college student that lives by himself? At the very least, like, to establish a feeling of solitude, and a feeling of solitude, like being alone in a dark house, and you might, like, that in and of itself is a frightening mental image or frightening scenario to be in, and I've experienced it before, of being alone in a house and hearing noises that you don't know where they're coming from since you're the only person in the house. It's like sometimes it's just your mind playing tricks on you, but your mind automatically inserts stuff to kind of give form to whatever it is that's causing the noises. And that could have been made for an interesting story, but this right here is just another generic monster who doesn't even get described in any level of detail beyond having a creepy smile and creepy eyes, which, just call it the rake just call it the rake and be done with it, you know? Like, some level of effort is all I'm asking here. I don't mean like that. This is some level better than some of the stories I've read before, but also the narrator here was just a melodramatic crybaby, and I hate to be that blunt, but it was true. Like, he was scared out of his wits just because he heard a light tapping sound. At the very least, maybe show he was looking around for the tapping. Or if you want to go into a more psychological story, maybe the tapping sounds constantly persist every night and is growing to the point where he's starting to lose sleep over and he's starting to lose his mind. I don't mean that literally, because it doesn't have to be another, oh, I went crazy and did such and such story. I mean in the sense that we need to get a feeling, a sense of dread. Or you could have it where the noises keep persisting each night and they grow more and more hostile as he desperately looks around his house for the source of the sound. And it could be this creature just driving him crazy before it outright goes to try and kill him. I mean, it would be somewhat cliche, but at the very least it would be a little bit more than what you gave here. Here, the story is called The Tapping, and The Tapping barely has any precedent on what's happening. I mean, if you wanted to go in that direction, then have the noise be a constant thing. Like, seems like a ripoff of another story too. I forgot what it was called, but there was another story I listened to, and it was to the effect of, I think Mr. Otis Gyrie read it on his channel. Oh, sorry I hit the microphone for a second. Mr. Otis Gyrie read it on his channel, and it was that effect. It was someone tap, 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 and the narrator kind of slowly kind of getting more and more paranoid because of the tapping noise. And while I thought it was a little melodramatic there, at the very least, he starts out with a calm mindset. Here, this person just immediate panic. You know, you might be a serial killer that's about to break down my door with a chainsaw. I mean, it didn't go to that extent, but still, I mean, some one of the more humane traits in a person is when they think rationally, and no one would immediately panic just because he heard a slight tapping noise in his house. If it kept persisting and it got louder, like I suggested, then that's cause for alarm. But, I don't know, this story could have been a lot better. And the fact that it just killed police at the end of it, am I supposed to be menaced by that? Like, the thing is, like, violence is something that we as a society has grown rather desensitized to. And it can't be as effective as it used to be unless you do it in a way that's effective and actually sits home with us. When you casually brush past the violent part of this story, you kind of make it mundane and therefore something that we can just easily adjust to as the reader. And the one thing that still should always stand true, there should be absolutely should have to be subjected to. Unless you're a boxer or something like that. At the very least, that's willing. But if even then, there's some mild consent in that. But there's none of this. It's not present here. You glance over it, and then we, as the reader, become desensitized to it. When you just offhandedly kill these two cops that didn't have a name or personality or anything like that. And if it sounds like I'm being hard on it, and I don't really mean to, it's only because I really get tired of stories like this that unintentionally don't pay that much attention to stuff like that. Those are things you need to think about. You need to always think about how your story is going to be perceived and how it's going to be viewed by people who are going to be reading it and are going to critique it. But all in all, I forgot who it was. I think it was. I forgot the name of the author, but I hope he sees this one day. And just to let you know, I don't no hard feelings, but the whole point of this is to read stories that are actually might be potentially good, and I'm afraid your story didn't measure up. I hope you written stuff better than this. Written by Nathaniel Hawthorne. That name sounds familiar. I'm hoping that isn't... I know I'm going for a stretch, but I'm hoping that isn't Mr. Angry Dog, because I remember being on his DeviantArt when I first initially spoke to him, and one of the characters he had was like a corrupt minister. And just in case people are still wondering how I feel about Mr. Angry Dog, my feelings have not changed in the slightest. Still hate his guts. But okay, I click on Nathaniel Hawthorne, and wait a minute. Is this an actual post from Literary Style? Let me see. Let me see. I'm sorry it's taking so long. Come on, stop freezing on me. I just want to search something. It's not that hard. I apologize for the screen delay again. Because I'm hoping that someone didn't just outright post yep, here it is, the Minister's Black Veil. This person just posted someone else's work. Really, Creepypasta Wiki, you didn't really pay attention to that? Come on now. I'll read this on another time. I'm gonna read this in just as a random blind reading, but I'm not gonna read it as it is because that's very... Don't do that. Just if it's a matter of you wanted to share a classic story that you think doesn't get enough attention, that's all well and good, but at the same time, you can't just do that. Don't post it on the wiki. Post it somewhere else where people are more likely to see it. Unless there's a... Well, I could be wrong. There could be a... I'll admit right now, there could be a section for popular authors. No, it's not in that section. It's in items and... Okay. Alright. This is a creepypasta called The Knocking by... Let's see. There is no credit here. Damn. Okay. let's just start. I think it's in multiple parts too. Fine. I suppose I should start this by telling you why I bought System Shock 2. Oh, this is a gaming pasta? Oh, God. It would be really funny if this person just casually brought it up and it never comes back in the story again. Like, he just wanted to talk about something random before he started the story. It's simple, really. I bought it because it was cheap, and I've heard good things about it. A boring reason to buy a game, but trust me, that what happens next is anything but. That's for me to dictate, buddy. About 15 minutes after buying it, the game had installed. Okay, apparently. What did you... How did... Oh, no, there's Steam, so... You know, you could buy it on... Never mind, I was about to make fun of that, but never mind. And I was ready to play. After I started it up, the graphics option was on high, and selected a new game. At this point, everything was going fine. The game loaded the tutorial level, which ran without issue. It wasn't until I started the main game that I noticed something was off. After about an hour into the game, I saw a message in the PDA repeated throughout the logs and notes section. At first I ignored it, as I thought it was just a part of the game, but the strangeness of the messages and the frequency of them felt abnormal and didn't fit with the way that the game seemed to work. The messages themselves were very off-putting, as if someone was trying to talk to me or just using two words. I'm knocking. Instead of coming to the crazy conclusion that my game was haunted, I just brushed it off as a weird bug. I wanted to find out how to get rid of it. Don't do that again. Not really a complaint, more so as a word of advice to the person who wrote this. Do not include passages like that have some level of self-awareness of the genre, because it kind of comes off as tactless. I mean, you could poke fun of it if it's in a comedy story, but not here. Not in a story that you want to be taken seriously. So I checked all the options in the game settings, which unfortunately didn't do any good. And I reluctantly decided to look deeper into the game files, even though I didn't expect to fix anything. Staring at what felt like a different language, I tried looking for things I could do at the game's files to fix the problem, but found nothing. I was doesn't really need to be a comment there. I'm just saying. I was hoping for some kind of corrupt file that I would replace, or something as straightforward as that. But the only thing I noticed was a few of the file names occasionally flickering, which I mostly ignored. I settled on just reinstalling the game, which in hindsight I should have done in the first place. A week had gone by, and the game had shown no sign of trouble until the next 3 days, which I will never forget. Until the next 3 days I will never forget. That's not good phrasing, but this isn't a Ben Drown ripoff, is it? July 18th, 2013. I decided on playing System Shock 2 to completion, since I had almost finished it the week before. I started the game and was ready to play from where I left off. But there was something new this time, a sound that wasn't there before. It was a repetitive, dull beat, and the longer I played it, the easier I could make it out. Within minutes, I could hear it click clearly. It was as if someone were knocking. But seconds later, I couldn't hear anything except for an eerie silence that cast itself across the entire room. That should be capitalized. Remembering what happened on the day I bought the game, I checked the PDA for anything. To my horror, the messages had returned. Only this time they were different, darker, more frequent. I'm still knocking. Okay, again, serial escalation. The game was twisting my sanity. It felt as though the whole world tilted. I had to stop playing, but that wasn't enough. I had to uninstall and get as far away from it as possible. But it wouldn't let me uninstall it. Every time I tried, the box would appear in a text reading, knock, knock, knock. My heart was racing. What's going on? Is this some kind of sick joke? I thought, hoping it was. I desperately searched through the game's directory, trying to find some kind of anomaly that would explain what was happening. But all I found was my nightmare has yet to finish. Tense swap. Although unnerved, I was determined to find out what was going on. While searching through the games directory, I noticed the file names flashing again, but this time I could make out the words blinking back and forth. Make out words blinking back and forth. There's no words. Um, I focused intently, trying to read each flickering word. Each time I made out a word, I wrote it down. Together, the words read, "Let me tell you a secret." That's all it said. I couldn't find anything else. But I had to find out what it was trying to say. I had an idea that might work. I hesitantly launched the game and loaded my save file and opened up the command prompt, but before I did anything, I sat in silence, wondering to myself if I was about to do anything. What I was about to do was anything short of insanity. I took a deep breath and typed, "Come in." My screen went black, and before I could comprehend what was going on, my screen returned, this time showing a very basic interface with one word on the top left corner. "Hello." Using my computer, I managed to have a conversation with whoever was trying to mess with me, and this is it in its entirety. It's, "Hello? What the hell do you want? This isn't funny. Ellipses, ellipses. Answer me." "Answer you?" "Yes. Who are you and why are you messing with me?" "We are special. We match." "Match how? What are you talking about?" "We are the same." "What do you mean?" "Do you want to know a secret?" "What secret? Tell me." "I don't know if I should." "It's a big secret." "Quit messing around and just tell me." "You might not like the answer." "Fine, then stay out of my computer." I immediately turned off my computer. This was made harder by my trembling hands. My computer turned off and I couldn't bring myself to go near it. July 19th, 2013. Strangely enough, I found it easy to fall into a deep sleep. Upon waking, I didn't remember having any nightmares, save for the fleeting image of me staring into a mirror. For some reason, it didn't bother me. I had pretty much prepared myself for a nightmare when going to sleep last night, and I felt I had more things to worry about than a hazy memory stuck in my head. After coming back from college, I decided to go back on my computer, which probably wasn't a good idea, but curiosity got the better of me. My computer turned on like normal, and once I signed in, I was greeted with my regular desktop. This calmed my nerves. I went to the website YouTube. You don't have to point out it's a website. People know what YouTube is, which I spent most of my time on, and checked my subscriptions tab to see what new videos have been uploaded. I decided on watching a new video by a guy I just subscribed to. Nearing the end of the video, I'd scroll to read the top comments, and just as I began to read them, I began to sweat and tremble violently. I couldn't believe what it had done. Every comment, every single one, had been replaced with, "Please let me in again." I couldn't control myself. I began screaming, "Leave me alone!" like a lunatic. Oh my god, this is stupid. I didn't know what else to do. I just wanted to think this thing gone. Once I started to calm down, I thought to myself, maybe if I let it in one more time, just one more time, it'll leave me alone. Since it could change the web page, I thought it wouldn't need to talk through the game anymore. So I opened up a notepad and typed, "You win, come in." Why did you get to leave?" "What? Why do you get that body?" "What?" "It's not fair." "What are you talking about?" "I want to live, but you just ignore me, even though I'm always here." "Where?" "With you." "You're not making any sense. What about that secret? Can you tell me now?" "For the answer, you'll just have to look closer. Goodbye." My computer suddenly shuts down. July 20th, 2013. 1:17 a.m. It was past midnight. I was struggling to get to sleep. I couldn't forget about him and everything that's happened up until now. 2:10 p.m. After about an hour of struggling, I finally drifted to sleep, and the worst night I have ever experienced begins. Time unknown. I find myself in a blackened room. My arms slouched over my lap, accompanied by a feeling of emptiness looming over me. I start to look around and notice a large, old-fashioned mirror hanging on the other side of the room. I slowly stand up and begin to walk towards it. Whilst making my way over, I began to hear faint laughter in the background, which got more intense the closer I got to the mirror. Once I arrived, I just stood there, staring at the absent reflection, with the terrible laughter blaring in my ears what felt like hours. Then, with a single heartbeat, all my fear returned, and what felt like a fatal stab to my sanity. What was once absent had returned, both my fear and my reflection, but my reflection was twisted. It had no eyes, no ears, or a mouth. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run, but I couldn't pull my gaze from that horrific image. A few moments later, I could see a new reflection. Someone behind me. It began slowly to move towards me. Except it wasn't walking. It was just moving closer, allowing me to see what it was. It seemed to be some sort of mannequin. As I got near, I noticed its mouth moving. It was laughing. But more than that, it had my face. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to scream. I guess you could say, you had no mouth, and you must scream. Ho 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 ho, oh ho ho, oh ho 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 ho. I'm so hilarious. I forced my mouth as much as I could, tearing it open, releasing the loudest sound I could muster. The laughing stopped. He began to speak. Hello. While tears streamed along my empty face. You don't have eyes. I tried my best to reply. Please, please tell me, what is the secret? He quickly replies, look closer. Terrified, I desperately reply, no, please tell me. He loudly and slowly responds, look closer. I hysterically began to shout, what are you? What are you? What are you? 4:56 p.m. I awake, staring at my computer screen, hands positioning over the keyboard. A large block of text covering the computer screen. I'm you, I'm you, I'm you, I'm you. That's all. It said over again. I repeated the thought over and over again in my head. Am I going insane? Because I couldn't tell anyone. And it just ends here. This story sucked. I would like to be pleasantly surprised one of these days, but this is awful. And it's one of those things where structurally, in terms of the grammar and whatnot, it's not that bad. I look at this and I get this feeling that this person is indeed capable of writing a good story, but this was shite. Like, I talked about serial escalation with the last one, and this is where it's on an all-time high. He literally starts panicking just because he starts getting one or two things on his game. It's like, this feels like a ripoff of Ben Drowned, and it made... And Ben Drowned, like, the author himself, the narrator, acknowledged that the feeling of dread he was getting from playing the game felt unnatural. Like, it was a outside force that was making him feel a certain way. And it actually somewhat kept up with the fact that it was a haunted gaming cartridge. There, it's a haunted program, System Shock 2. What was the point in even having it be System Shock 2? He used that to introduce us to the story, but it has little to no relevance on anything. Why was it just randomly haunted? Was it haunted? Is the idea supposed to be that he's just insane? Then it could have done a little bit more to show us that. There was nothing indicating that he was actually insane. This is just... I mean, I was mildly interested to see where it was going, but then it peters out into that non-existent anticlimax. I can't even call it an anticlimax. It feels like this story isn't finished. Ugh. Made worse yet with these, he getting distressed over mild posts, and even some people complain, and it's a understandable complaint, that when it comes to these gaming creepypastas, well, one mistake that they tend to make is that they put a little bit too much detail, or, well, you know what I mean, but emphasis is put on the abnormalities in the game itself rather than trying to tell a story. Like, what's happening in the game is meant to tell the story. Like, the Ben Drowned story, the Majora's Mask thing was sort of a backdrop or a catalyst for something more that was happening, not just within the game itself. Like, it was, if, let me put it like this, if it didn't have a Jay Usable, the narrator, showing how he progressively went insane or was going insane after this thing is relentlessly fucking with him and mind raping him, then it wouldn't be as well liked as it was and effective as it is now. That story had the Jay Usable had the he knew better than to just have it revolve primarily around the abnormalities of the game. And even then, the abnormalities he presented in the game were presented in a way that, if you look closely enough, told a slight story, and that could have been explained in the blog post too. This here, there isn't even a reason for it to be in the form of post or a journal, because, again, if the idea is that he's trying to tell the story to get off his chest, this is one of the worst introductions I've seen in a long time for that. It just says, I bought System Shock 2. That's it. Like, at the very least, like, have it like, I had this horrible, that bizarre experience happen to me for a while, and I felt I needed to get it off my chest to try to move on. It's kind of cliche when stories do that, but there's a reason why they do it. They do it because it properly introduces us to the narrative. Right here, this is stuff he's writing in a journal, and the way he starts the story off, emphasis is put on the fact that he bought System Shock 2, despite the fact that near halfway, in fact, not even halfway through the story, like 1/4 into the story, he barely mentions System Shock 2 again. Ugh. This is shite. This is absolute shite. And I think the reason why I'm more frustrated with this story more than anything I've read so far is primarily because when I read this guy and see how he has a decent cadence and whatnot, the word choice and everything, and he has a fair, like, there was a moderate idea or sense of pacing at the beginning, shows me that this person could write a decent story, but it was just butchered because of how everything is implemented. This is both disappointing and bad, and that is a lethal combination. So, I don't know who wrote this, and maybe one day you'll actually hear this. Now, I would like to hear that. And if so, and if you actually are upset with all that I've said about the story that you've written, I encourage you, and I'm not being pessimistic or sarcastic here, I'm being completely serious, post any other stories or one of your better stories in the chat, right, or a link to it. I would actually really like to read what you've written, because if this is your first, and I'm guilty of it too, I've done the same thing, your first is a terrible story. My first creepypasta was a terrible one, and I would like to see if you improved, or how much you've improved in general, because this isn't really showing me much of anything. But I think this is enough, because I've been a little bit too much of a negative Nancy here. Feel free to join me on the next Crappy Pasta Critiques. I might do another two-parter, or rather a two-piece one. Although, oddly enough, this video is not that much longer than the other ones I've made. This is Vince 12 signing out. Y'all have a nice day, and long live the Inquisition. When is Dating Game Part 3 coming out, you bastard?